In a world where industrial power defines military power, one of Europe's strongest defense nations is now buying armored vehicles built thousands of kilometers away in Australia. That single fact sounds almost counterintuitive, even disruptive. Yet in late March 2026, it became reality when Germany confirmed it would begin receiving Boxer heavy weapon carrier vehicles produced not in Europe, but at Rheinmetall's facility in Queensland, with deliveries expected to start from mid-2026 and continue through to 2030 under a program estimated at around €2 to 2.7 billion euros for roughly 123 vehicles. This is not a marginal procurement. It is a deliberate strategic choice by Germany, a country with one of the most advanced defense industrial bases in the world, to source a core element of its land combat capability from Australia, a nation traditionally viewed as a defense importer rather than exporter. The vehicles themselves are not generic platforms either. They're a specialized heavy weapon carrier variant of the Boxer, derived from the Australian Army's Boxer combat reconnaissance vehicle, equipped with a 30mm cannon and anti-armor missile systems, designed to provide direct fire support and replace Germany's aging VZL-1 fleet within its medium force structure. More than 100 of these vehicles are expected to be manufactured in Australia, signaling that this is not just a symbolic gesture, but a large-scale industrial commitment. The obvious question is why Germany, facing increasing pressure to modernize its armed forces after years of underinvestment and responding to a rapidly shifting European security environment, would choose to rely on production capacity in the Indo-Pacific rather than concentrate output within Europe. The answer begins with timing and scale. Since the war in Ukraine, European defense industries have been operating under significant strain, with production lines stretched and supply chains under pressure, creating bottlenecks that limit how quickly new capabilities can be fielded. By leveraging Rheinmetall's Military Vehicle Center of Excellence in Queensland, Germany effectively expands its production footprint beyond Europe, accelerating delivery timelines and reducing industrial constraints without sacrificing quality or interoperability. But the implications run deeper than production efficiency. This deal represents a structural shift in how modern military capability is generated, moving away from nationally bounded manufacturing towards globally distributed defense ecosystems. Australia is no longer just a customer in this system. It is emerging as a production node capable of building advanced armor vehicles for one of NATO's leading militaries. That raises a second, more strategic question. What does it mean when a country like Germany is willing to depend on an Indo-Pacific partner for critical land systems? It suggests a rethinking of alliance industrial strategy, where resilience is achieved not by concentrating capability, but by diversifying it geographically. It also signals growing confidence in Australia's defense industrial base, which has matured through programs like Land 400 to the point where it can deliver complex platforms at scale. And perhaps most importantly, it hints at a future where the outcome of high-intensity conflict may depend less on who designs the most advanced system, and more on who can sustain production across a distributed global network. This is the real story behind Germany buying Australian armored vehicles, and it is only just beginning to unfold. To understand how this situation unfolded, it is necessary to step back and look at the sequence of decisions that led to this moment, because this was not a sudden shift, but a carefully structured program built over several years. The foundation was laid when Germany committed to modernizing its land forces and replacing legacy platforms, such as the VZL-1, with a more capable and mobile system that could operate effectively within its medium force concept, prioritizing mobility, firepower, and rapid deployment across varied terrain. At the same time, Australia had already embarked on its own transformation under the Land 400 program, acquiring and then locally producing the Boxer combat reconnaissance vehicle, with Rheinmetall establishing the military vehicle Center of Excellence in Queensland as the central hub for manufacturing, integration, and sustainment. By 2024, the cooperation between Germany and Australia had progressed into formal agreements, including a government-to-government arrangement that enabled production responsibilities to be shared across continents, effectively linking European operational requirements with Australian industrial capacity. The turning point came in late March 2026, when the first Boxer heavy weapon carrier produced in Australia was formally presented to the German defense minister during a visit to the Queensland facility, marking the transition from planning to execution. This variant was not simply a reconnaissance platform, but a heavier configuration equipped with a 30mm automatic cannon and anti-armor guided missile systems, designed to provide direct fire support to infantry units and fill a critical capability gap in Germany's force structure. The program itself is structured to deliver approximately 123 vehicles, with more than 100 units to be manufactured in Australia, and initial deliveries scheduled to commence from mid-2026 and continue progressively through to 2030. Financially, the scale of the project, estimated between 2 and 2.7 billion euros, reflects both the complexity of the system and the strategic importance placed on rapid capability acquisition. What makes this timeline particularly significant is that it overlaps with a period of intense demand across European defense industries, where production lines are already operating at high capacity due to increased procurement across multiple countries. By allocating a substantial portion of manufacturing to Australia, Germany effectively bypasses some of these constraints, enabling a more reliable delivery schedule while maintaining access to Rheinmetall's established design and integration expertise. The Australian facility itself is not a peripheral workshop, but a fully developed industrial complex capable of producing advanced armored vehicles to NATO standards, supported by a network of local suppliers that contribute components, subsystems, and engineering services. This distributed production model ensures that the vehicles delivered to Germany will be fully interoperable with existing NATO systems, while also benefiting from the refinements introduced during Australia's own Boxer program, including lessons learned in integration, sustainment, and operational deployment. As deliveries begin, these vehicles will enter service as part of Germany's evolving medium force structure, providing a balance between heavy track platforms and lighter, more deployable assets, and reinforcing a broader shift towards flexible, rapidly deployable land capabilities. In this sense, the timeline is not just about when vehicles are delivered, but about how two geographically distant nations have aligned their industrial and military priorities to produce a shared capability outcome. What makes this development fundamentally different from a traditional procurement program is that it is not driven primarily by platform performance, but by industrial logic shaped by recent geopolitical pressures, especially across Europe, where defense production capacity has been pushed to its limits following the sustained demand created by the war in Ukraine. Over the past 2 years, European manufacturers have faced increasing strain, with extended lead times, supply chain disruptions, and competing national priorities slowing down the pace at which new armored systems can be delivered, even from major powers like Germany. In this context, the decision to allocate a significant portion of Boxer production to Australia is not simply a matter of cost or partnership, but a strategic response to industrial bottlenecks that could otherwise delay force modernization by years. By leveraging Rheinmetall's established facility in Queensland, Germany effectively expands its manufacturing base beyond Europe, creating a parallel production line that operates within the same technical standards but outside the immediate constraints of the European industrial environment. This is what analysts increasingly describe as distributed defense manufacturing, where production is no longer confined within national borders but spread across allied networks to increase resilience and output. The implications of this shift are substantial because it signals a move away from the traditional model in which military capability is tightly linked to domestic industry, toward a system where capability is generated through integrated international production ecosystems. In practical terms, this means that the ability to field new equipment in a timely manner may depend less on where a system is designed, and more on where it can be built efficiently at scale. The Boxer program illustrates this clearly, as vehicles designed by a German company are being manufactured in Australia, using a supply chain that includes both Australian and international suppliers, before being delivered back to Germany for operational use. This reverse flow of production challenges long-standing assumptions about industrial sovereignty, raising questions about how nations define control over critical defense capabilities when key components are produced abroad. However, rather than weakening sovereignty, this model can enhance it by ensuring access to multiple production sources, reducing vulnerability to regional disruptions, and enabling faster surge capacity in times of crisis. For Germany, this approach provides a way to accelerate modernization without overloading its domestic industry, while still maintaining control over design, integration, and final deployment. For Australia, it represents a significant elevation in its role within the global defense ecosystem, transforming it from a recipient of advanced systems into a contributor to allied capability. More broadly, this arrangement reflects a deeper trend within NATO and its partners, where industrial cooperation is becoming as important as operational cooperation, and where the ability to sustain production over time is increasingly recognized as a decisive factor in high-intensity conflict scenarios. In this sense, the Boxer production arrangement is not an isolated case, but an early example of a broader restructuring in how military power is generated, distributed, and sustained across allied networks. For Australia, this moment represents more than participation in a single export program. It marks a structural shift in how the nation positions itself within the global defense landscape, moving from a long-standing role as a buyer of advanced systems toward becoming a producer, integrator, and exporter capable of contributing directly to allied force development. This transformation did not occur overnight, but was built through a series of deliberate investments under programs such as Land 400, where Australia not only acquired the Boxer combat reconnaissance vehicle, but also insisted on establishing domestic production through Rheinmetall's Military Vehicle Center of Excellence in Queensland. That facility, now fully operational, has evolved into one of the most advanced armored vehicle manufacturing sites outside Europe, with the capacity to assemble, integrate, and test complex systems to NATO standards while supporting a growing network of local suppliers that contribute components ranging from electronics and armor modules to mechanical subsystems. The scale of this ecosystem is significant, with more than 50 Australian companies participating in the supply chain, creating a level of industrial depth that extends beyond simple assembly and into areas such as sustainment, upgrades, and long-term lifecycle support. From a military perspective, this industrial base provides the Australian Army with advantages that go beyond equipment availability, including faster access to upgrades, improved maintenance responsiveness, and the ability to adapt platforms based on operational experience without relying entirely on overseas partners. At the same time, collaboration with Germany and Rheinmetall ensures that Australia remains aligned with the latest developments in armored vehicle design, including advancements in fire control systems, sensor integration, and networked battlefield capabilities. The export of Boxer vehicles back to Germany reinforces this relationship as a two-way exchange rather than a one-directional transfer of technology, where Australia benefits from continued access to European expertise while demonstrating its own capacity to deliver high-quality systems at scale. This has broader implications for national defense planning, as it strengthens the case for sovereign industrial capability, not in the sense of complete independence, but as the ability to participate meaningfully in a distributed production network where responsibilities and benefits are shared among trusted partners. It also supports economic objectives by generating skilled jobs, attracting further investment, and positioning Australia as a competitive player in the global defense market, particularly within the Indo-Pacific region where demand for modern land systems is expected to grow. Importantly, this shift aligns with Australia's broader strategic outlook, which emphasizes resilience, self-reliance in critical areas, and deeper integration with allies across both operational and industrial domains. As the Boxer program progresses, it provides a tangible example of how these principles can be implemented in practice, demonstrating that a country once dependent on imported capability can, through sustained policy and industrial development, become an essential contributor to the defense capabilities of its partners. In this way, The vehicles being produced in Queensland are not just platforms for deployment. They are evidence of a changing balance in how military capability is generated, shared, and sustained among allied nations. When viewed in isolation, the production of armored vehicles in Australia for delivery to Germany might appear as a singular industrial arrangement, but when placed alongside other ongoing programs within the Australian Army and its partners, a broader operational pattern begins to emerge, one that reflects a deliberate effort to build a fully integrated land warfare system rather than isolated capabilities. Over the past year, Australia has accelerated multiple initiatives that align closely with this direction, including the introduction of new uncrewed aerial systems under Project DF129, where platforms such as the SIPAC Corvo X and Quantum Systems Vector are being integrated into artillery units to enhance reconnaissance and targeting, effectively extending the Army's ability to detect and track targets at greater distances with improved accuracy. At the same time, the acquisition of high-mobility artillery rocket systems and the planned integration of the precision strike missile, which has recently completed successful flight testing with a range exceeding 300 miles and the ability to engage moving targets, signals a clear investment in long-range strike capabilities that can operate across both land and maritime domains. When these developments are combined with mobile, heavily armed platforms such as the Boxer heavy weapon carrier, a coherent operational concept becomes visible, where reconnaissance, targeting, and maneuver are linked into a continuous chain that allows forces to identify, track, and respond to threats more efficiently across extended distances. This type of integration, often described as a kill chain, is increasingly central to modern military doctrine, as it enables faster decision-making and more effective coordination between different elements of the force without relying on a single dominant platform. In this context, the Boxer vehicles being produced in Queensland are not just filling a specific capability requirement for Germany, but are part of a wider shift toward highly mobile, networked land forces that can operate in complex environments with greater flexibility. This is reinforced by the growing emphasis on medium-weight forces, which prioritize mobility and deployability over the heavier protection of traditional tracked vehicles, allowing units to respond more rapidly to changing operational conditions while still maintaining significant firepower. The same logic applies to Australia's broader defense planning, where investments in long-range fires, autonomous systems, and mobile armored platforms are designed to complement each other rather than function independently. This integrated approach reflects lessons observed in recent conflicts, where the effectiveness of a force is determined not only by the quality of individual systems, but by how well those systems are connected and supported by reliable logistics and industrial capacity. By participating in the production of advanced armored vehicles for Germany while simultaneously developing its own network capabilities, Australia is positioning itself within this emerging model of warfare, where success depends on the ability to combine industrial output with operational integration. For Germany, the benefits extend beyond acquiring new vehicles, as the partnership provides access to a production ecosystem that is aligned with this integrated approach, ensuring that the systems entering service are compatible with evolving doctrines and capable of supporting future upgrades. Taken together, these developments illustrate that the significance of this program lies not only in the vehicles themselves, but in how they fit into a larger transformation of land forces, where mobility, connectivity, and sustained production capacity are becoming the defining elements of military effectiveness. As the first vehicles begin moving through production lines in Queensland and preparations continue for deliveries to Germany, the broader significance of this arrangement becomes clearer when viewed against the trajectory of global defense trends, where industrial capacity, supply chain resilience, and alliance integration are increasingly treated as core elements of military power rather than supporting factors. What is taking shape is not simply a bilateral partnership, but part of a wider restructuring in how allied nations organize the production of critical military systems, shifting from concentrated national industries toward distributed networks that can sustain output under pressure and adapt to changing operational demands. This approach reflects a growing recognition that in any prolonged high-intensity scenario, The ability to maintain production over time is as important as the initial fielding of advanced equipment, and that no single country, regardless of its industrial strength, can efficiently meet all requirements alone without creating vulnerabilities. By incorporating Australia into its production chain for armored vehicles, Germany is effectively reducing its exposure to regional bottlenecks while increasing its access to alternative manufacturing capacity, a move that enhances both flexibility and resilience without compromising interoperability or standards. For Australia, the implications extend well beyond this single program, as participation in such a network reinforces its position as a reliable contributor to allied capability and strengthens its domestic industrial base in ways that support long-term strategic autonomy. This evolution also aligns with broader initiatives aimed at expanding sovereign production in key areas, including munitions and missile components, where recent agreements with European partners such as Germany have explored technology transfer opportunities related to warhead development, further embedding Australia within a shared industrial framework. At the operational level, the integration of systems produced across multiple regions requires a high degree of standardization and coordination, ensuring that vehicles, weapons, and support systems can function seamlessly regardless of where they're manufactured, and this in turn drives deeper cooperation not only between governments, but also between industries and research institutions. The result is a more interconnected defense ecosystem in which capability is co-developed, co-produced, and co-sustained, reflecting a shift away from purely national approaches toward collective resilience. Returning to the question that framed this entire discussion, the reason Germany is sourcing armored vehicles from Australia is not rooted in a lack of domestic expertise, but in a strategic calculation that recognizes the advantages of distributed production in an increasingly complex security environment. It is a decision that highlights the changing nature of military power, where success depends not only on technological superiority, but also on the ability to mobilize industrial resources across a network of trusted partners. In that sense, the vehicles being built in Queensland are more than a procurement outcome. They are a signal of how future alliances may operate, where geography becomes less of a constraint and industrial cooperation becomes a central pillar of defense strategy.